So, Vipul, why don't you read? We'll start with reading of how to love God and then get into the um, board.
Okay,
So, can you see my screen?
not yet.
Others, can you see my screen? Or
On the way, I
No, we
suppose.
can't
Jai
see.
Baba.
oh, okay, that's funny. Now,
Yeah.
Yeah,
all right, thank you. Go ahead.
yeah. How to love God. To love God is the most important practical way is to love our fellow beings. If we feel for others in the same way as we feel for our own dear ones, we love God. Number one, if instead of seeing faults in others, we look within ourselves, we are loving God. Two, if instead of robbing others to help ourselves, we rob ourselves to help others, we are loving God. Three, if we suffer in the suffering of others and feel happy in the happiness of others, we are loving God. Four, if instead of worrying over our own misfortunes, we think of ourselves more fortunate than many others, we are loving God. Five, if we endure our lot with patience and contentment, accepting it as His will, we are loving God. Six, if we understand and feel that the greatest act of devotion and worship to God is not to hurt or harm any of His beings, we are loving God. Seven, to love God as He ought to be loved, we must live for God and die for God, knowing that the goal of life, all life, is to love God and find Him as our own self. Thank you, Jai Baba.
Har Meher Baba ki jai. That Ashok, you have to mute yourself, Ashok. There's a lot of static on your side. Now it's better. It's back. Ashok has to mute. Yeah, so we were at New Humanity. I hope at least some of you were able to listen to the audio file again or spend some time about the chapter. So I'll go to the board and let's fill out the card for this chapter before we go to the next one. So if you notice, I have updated the card to say it's a green label, so it's done. And if you open up the card, I also did some work. I uploaded the video. You have the YouTube link of yesterday. And I also added the audio file of Don Stevens reading this particular chapter. So those of you who got into Trello since yesterday would have seen those two updates. So with that, any questions or insights before we start discussing this chapter of yesterday? Ashok?
Yeah, Karthik, we have to subscribe to Trello. I have not done that exactly. I don't have these with me.
No, so you have to see the video of yesterday. You will figure out what to do. We'll
Okay,
talk
okay, okay,
offline. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Anyway, Jay Meher Baba, yes.
Jai Meher Baba. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah. So if there are no comments, then we'll just go to the essence of the chapter. So in essence of the chapter, what I have initially put there is basically the subtitles in the order that it's there in the chapter. So if you notice what we from yesterday's reading, it starts with reference to the divine plan, and he explains war, and he explains war to be nothing but a symptom of graver causes, and by that he means narrow identification with false values, basically all the separative values which are not at the individual level but quite often at the collective level. So I identify with my nation, I identify with a particular sect, a particular religion, and so on and so forth. And then he makes a brief description about egoism and selfishness, and of course wars being unnecessary and unreasonable. The idea of the spiritual self is brought out, and self must be eliminated in all spheres of life. Material adjustment requires spiritual understanding. We had questions around this, and we addressed those, I believe, which is what is material adjustment and what is spiritual adjustment. And please remember, this word is going to, I would say, though it's not in a negative sense, it's going to haunt us right through this book. It's a very beautiful word. In fact, two words that we read in this chapter will keep coming back again and again. One is adjustment. The second is values. So what values, false values, true values, real values. These are key words that Baba uses, and you'll see what I mean as we go through the journey. Then there's a lot of coverage for what was very insightful about science, right? So he says that the progress of science is for the larger good, but it has to be put in its place, kind of a message. Then there is next three subtitles are about next two subtitles are about spiritual experience and mystical experience. So if anybody wants to discuss that, that's we can talk about it. But then he again, like science, he neither disregards mystical experience, and in fact says that mystical experiences are only experienced at another realm and can never be explained by intellect. But don't get carried away. That's the second chapter, right? So I mean, second subtitle. So he says, hey, don't get carried away by it. Then spiritual experience not found in escape, which is you just get carried away by it, is a loss because you're not going to make progress. And new humanity will not be attached to external forms. Yeah. So Khalid had a good point here, if you recollect, on what is this cutoff point, what's new, and what's that new humanity. And I think we all concurred that post Baba's advent, I mean, in Baba, during and beyond Baba's advent, the humanity that is facing, is in this false, this creation would be the ones that are called the new humanity or referred to as new humanity. Identification with a narrow group is it's again, so either you can identify with false values at the separative existence of the individual self, or you can do it at a collective. Both are a waste. Then living the limited self-life through opposites, and just starts by explaining the solution to all of this being love, and love being an emotion that's self-communicative and reciprocative. He explains that. And then redemption of humanity through the greatest form of love, which is divine love. Obviously, all this is addressed and covered far more detail in the chapters on love down the line. So this is what is done from this chapter. Any points, any other things that I missed, any questions that emerge after we go through the subtitles?
Maybe regarding love, there are a few sentences at the end, the last three subtitles, I think.
Yeah, you want to go to the text? We can probably go quickly to the text and see it. Yeah. Hope for the future. Yeah, here it is. So love must be free from limitations, and then love essentially self-communicating. This is what I was saying, that it's a very subtle and beautiful emotion, and he describes that how love works. Yeah. Anything specific here, Mama? You're on mute, I guess.
Okay. I have a few sentences marked out here.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's talk about
If
it.
you allow, I will read those sentences.
Sure, go ahead.
Regarding hope for the future, the real possibility of new humanity are hidden to those who look only at the surface of the world situation, but they exist and only need the spark of spiritual understanding to come into full play and effect. However, I am skipping a sentence. However, one redeeming feature about human nature is that even in the midst of disruptive forces, there are invariably exists some form of love. So I go further and read, in order that love should come into its own, it must be untrammeled and unlimited. If there is to be a resurrection of humanity, the heart of man will have to be unlocked so that new love is born into it, a love that knows no corruption and is entirely free from individual and collective greed. The new humanity will come into existence through a release of love in measureless abundance. And this release of love can come through the spiritual awakening brought about by perfect masters. Love cannot be born of mere determination. So you just can't determine to love, it has to come on its own. Inward beauty of spontaneous love. These are some of the lines which I have marked. Love has to bring spontaneously from within. Love has to spring spontaneously from within. It can be awakened through the love itself. Love is essentially self-communicative. Those who do not have it catch it from those who have it. These are profound sentences, I think. Pure love from heart to heart. Divine love is unassailable to the onslaught of duality and is an expression of divinity itself. So these are some of the sentences I had marked out, just read through them. Jai Baba.
Yeah, I think they're very important and representative of Baba's thought, literally. But then, more importantly, you have also captured the essence of certain things which I liked, which is basically what I was referring to in the summary. Love is essentially self-communicative. Those who do not have it catch it from those who have it. Right? That's such a interesting and powerful line. Though we may relate to it, but we never think about it that way. But that's the way it is. And if you reflect back, I think quite often we have been subjects of experience of either recipients of the reciprocation or subjects of reciprocation. We reciprocate to somebody, or we experience the reciprocation of love when we give it in the true nature of love, right? Yeah. Good. Great. Any questions or insights? Anything that you'd like to share with the
Yeah,
group?
yeah, Karthik. I just have one observation. Whilst we are rereading this discourses, um, one of the things I have had in my mind was we should just keep on noting or highlighting the opposites. Opposites of the um the good and the bad, in the sense that the opposite of greed, opposite of anger, opposite of lust. So that we can compile that at the end of the journey of our discourses.
So why don't you take that onus? So I've been distributing a lot of responsibilities. That's it. That's why you should have seen yesterday's video. But why don't you take up this for every chapter, right? So whatever you discover, let's note it and you create a new card on Trello. We'll tell you what to do, and then you can
Okay,
create jobs.
I'll take that up, and I'll take it up as a primary responsibility, but also request others to.
We'll all contribute. Yes, we'll all
Thank you.
help you identify. Yes.
I will take that. This was it was in my to-do list, and while the second reading, I'll do it.
Sure. Okay. So,
Sounds
and I'm
good.
going to record.
Opposites attract. Opposites attract. That's why Java.
Yes, opposites attract. Correct.
Other thing is opposites are not real. Okay, they are only gradations.
Gradations, yeah.
Baba has very clearly said it's only gradation. There's no real value opposite.
Come again.
They also yeah.
No.
They also distract.
Yes, your identification with behavior of the opposite is a distraction. It's a recognition of a false value.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that there's no white, no black. There are shades of gray. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
No. Both.
Don't read that book, though. But
Sorry.
I have a question.
Namita is in duality.
It's in full duality today. Be careful.
Okay, so I'm not putting that reference of the book here, but any other references that people want to bring up, or anything you read about New Humanity. So if you recollect, in our first read, New Humanity was a poignant read because we were in the midst of COVID at its early stage. Fear was engulfing us, and I remember this was an emotional read for us, right? We identified with everything that was said here, right? And so obviously this read has been in a different world context, and we are approaching it merely as students. There we approached it as literally children looking up to a father explaining, saying, hey, things will be better, right? So that's what I remember from last time to this time, right? Any other references?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes. So any other references that springs up to mind, either now or later, please, we can add it here. I can't think of any.
Karthik, there's one more chapter almost at the last, just one page, I think. I forgot the name of the chapter.
That's related, yes.
Very much connected to this chapter.
But we're not going to go out of sequence, okay? I don't want to start that again.
Really? No? I thought we were going to create our own sequence.
Don't get me started.
But I just wanted to also add.
Yeah, sorry, Ashokji. Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
No, I just wanted to add that we perhaps had started with the chapter Travails of the New Order. We are talking about New Humanity, but we had started with the Travails of the New Order, and that was appropriate at that point of time because we were all scared of COVID. Now it's all things of the past now.
We have recognized that it's a false value and we are not scared anymore, huh? Sure.
Well,
Yes.
Not yet.
Oh,
Still the scare is there.
No, it's a false value, but Ravi, be convinced. It's not real. In the spiritual sense, it's not real. I don't know medical. I'm not here to judge. Anyway, so quiz, I think we'll leave it to what do you call Ravi? You can update when you get a chance. Ravi and Sherry. Yes.
My team partner.
Yes.
She's the leader.
Yeah. So then finally, Sanjay ji, when you get a chance, if there is any takeaways from this. So the advantage is once you get comfortable with this, right? So as you update any card, you'll get all the updates here in the bottom saying who did what, and you can get notified on your phone saying, oh, somebody posted it. So you can go and see it after that. So now I'll just put a comment. Ashok has an idea about opposites, right? And he's going to work on it, about opposites, and he's going to collate a list of them by chapter. Okay. So now it's persisted. Your idea is persisted, sir. So this is what I meant. So you'll see a comment like this, and that's an activity that just gets added, right? Okay, so with that, let's
Question.
jump to-
Sorry.
wants
I have
to
one
Oh,
question.
sorry. Okay, go ahead, Sunil.
My turn? Okay.
Your turn.
Yeah. You see, we learned through the chapter that solution to the world's problem or the new humanity, new world order is love, right? Through spiritualism, and love is a path. Now, this is exactly what my grandfather told me is Baba's teaching when I was like 10, 15 years. I was very small, just, listening, learning, and so on. And I just kept it in my mind. I never got a chance to ask him that we've had so many avatars in past, every 800 years. What's different this time that love is the primary message? What was the message of Rama, Jesus, Buddha? I don't think they highlighted love as the primary way for spiritualism, but my grandfather told me Baba says love in this age and century, love is the easiest way. So have we ever compared for a newcomer? That might be a question that comes in the mind always. Why this time Baba says love is the primary path, and then we dwell on teachings of love, what is love, and so on and so forth.
Super question.
Sunilji,
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose this is something to do with the evolution of consciousness of human race. So now we are at a stage that the material world has manifested itself to the fullest. The mind has progressed in the, in the scientific advancements. Man has gone to space, everything, and the next is left out is just the love part of it. That's what I think. Because in the historic period, man was struggling for his basic necessities. Actually, yeah.
I'm not too sure that I would like to buy it, but you see, we also hear during Rama's time when Mahabharata happened, apparently there was television. Apparently there were missiles that could be fired from distance. Science was also at its peak. That's the myth. I'm not sure reality or myth, but that's what we hear, and it could be possible.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sunilji.
I think science at any point in, history, people have thought, yeah, we are at the peak. Today, we think we are the peak. 100 years from now, it might be a completely different universe. So I'm not too sure that's... I would like to buy it, though. It makes sense, what you said, Sanjayji.
Yeah. In our doctor's lounge, there is a design of aircraft that is taken from one of the old Hindu scriptures, how to the pictures and all those things. Very interesting. Just one picture, photo framed and hung it. So there seems to be aircrafts at that time also, but we don't know. There's no proof and all. But one point I would like to make is there is a cycle, right? In the avatars coming to the Earth, there are cycles. And in this cycle, seventh, Baba said, he is the seventh and last, and he also said it's the greatest. So Baba started giving the message of love. That is the easiest way of getting God realization. What happens later on, I'm not sure, but that's what I'm thinking.
This is what my grandfather said. Easiest way of God realization in current age and century. I remember his words.
See, in Rama's time, it was, what was Rama's time? What was the message?
Dharma.
Duty.
Dharma.
Duty. Dharma. Yeah.
Dharma. Yeah. And in Krishna's time, doing the duty also, and leaving the result to the God. That was emphasized a lot.
Yeah.
And
surrenderance.
Buddha time, it's a nirvana, right? Nirvana, meditation and creating a nirvana state, and then
renunciation.
Renunciation. Correct.
How about Christ?
And the Christ time, I think he did emphasize love in Christ time. Not as much as Baba did, but
Exactly.
Christ
That's
said.
what I'm trying to say. Christians believe in love. Sunilji, if you remember, we read the quote by Jesus, love thy neighbor. Jesus
Love thy
always
neighbor.
emphasized
Okay,
on
yes.
love. And even for me in Sikhism, even for us, since childhood, the holy book or the teachings of Guru Nanak or Guru Gobind, or all the 10 gurus, it has always been sacrifice, love, and surrender. Words of Baba. Although I know Guru Nanak Ji was only in the 6th plane, I don't know. I mean, I had read
No, I think
that.
he was perfect master, right?
He was a
Baba
perfect, I
said
think.
Yes, yes.
You are a
yes.
perfect master. Yeah.
Yeah. And
So they emphasize all the kirtans or all the wordings from the book is only about remembering God and loving God. Remembering God and loving God.
chanting Simran. Simran. And maybe Khalid Bhai can explain more about during the Muhammad time. But Muhammad could never say that he was God because of the mental condition of all the people at that time. And he was saying that he got these messages from Angel Gabriel. And there are two things he achieved. One is to learn from others, the values we can learn from others. That's one thing. The second thing is he inculcated the teaching aspect in Agent Gabriel. This is what written in Beams, right? If I remember right, is it in Beams that we read this about Muhammad? No,
I'm
maybe
not
somewhere
sure.
else.
Maybe somewhere else. Yeah.
Somewhere
Anyway,
else,
God
yeah.
speaks,
Huh?
God speaks.
God
I think
speaks?
it was God speaks.
I see. In the
Okay, so
supplement,
Sunil,
yeah.
coming to Sunil's question, right? So I think do you buy it or you want more discount? So
No,
basically,
I think I buy it to a large extent. Yeah.
Okay, no, I think it's just the relevance of the time. So
True,
it's and he has said that in multiple contexts very clearly, right? What his message and his prescription, his prescriptive guidance is based on the period and the level of consciousness of the people. And then there's also reference in other places where he has talked about heart and mind, and earth being having a balance of heart and mind, and he's trying to restore that balance and get the supremacy of the heart, and so on and so forth. So I think love being the supreme thing is something that is relevant to the time and avataric timing of the avataric advent and the nature of the spiritual progress of the souls at that time.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, let's keep that.
One more point.
So why don't we add that question up here and leave it there, right? So we'll see how that works.
One more point is when the avatar comes, Baba said he comes every 700 to 1400 years. But if you look at the past avatars, there are some gaps. We don't know if there are some avatars that came and worked and without any popularity they left. But one of the main purposes of the avatar is to awaken the hearts. So they don't need any popularity for that. They just awaken the hearts, and then once it's awakened, when the seed is put into the consciousness, it takes itself. Baba said he puts the seed in the heart, and that's about it. He doesn't do anything else. That seed of love will grow, and that will lead us into the God realization.
But again,
So
another byproduct of this same discussion.
Right.
Every time avatar comes, he tries to seed the seed of love in humanity, but not everybody gets redemption, right? Some do. The universe still progresses. Many souls come again. Population increases. There's again after 700-800 years need to come back. So it's a cycle. It's like a machine.
Yeah. Right. Whoever is, let's say, whoever goes to Singapore, they get God realization. Right. And people around Malaysia, India, all these people also will be pulled into Singapore to get God.
They will try to get slowly.
I'm too far away from Singapore.
But Singapore government controls the population. There is immigration check.
So they have a status on the passport, by the way.
Right. No, I think we can. I think we can think it in another angle also. With the lapse of time and lot of say reincarnations happening in the say the whole community or the society, there will be a large number of souls, drop souls, which are on the verge of realization or at a better placement in the path for spirituality. So they need a particular push from there to go further. That is done by the avatar. So that is, we are in the path, and say as we have a lot of reincarnation, we reach another 800 years or 1600. So another avatar will come and push us to the next plane. So that is also a way we can think of.
Yeah,
Baba.
perhaps many vacancies on plane one.
Yeah. Iraj calls is like a progression of a procession. So there is you can assume humanity in a procession. So on the front is the avatar, and there are people who are very close to him, and there are people close to the people who are close to him. It's like that. So those people who are much closer to him get the realization first, and the others slowly progress towards that direction. Jai Baba. Let's talk on this.
Great.
Thank you. Enough
So,
of that. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, Shrey has her hands up. Does she have a question? Or was it?
I'm sorry, that was for Sunil ji when
Okay,
the message on for Christianity
Thank
and yeah.
No problem. Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
So
that
we'll
helped.
continue with selfishness, page 10 on the physical book. Selfishness. Analysis of selfishness. Selfishness comes into existence owing to the tendency of desires to find fulfillment in action and experience. It is born of fundamental ignorance about one's own true nature. Human consciousness is clouded by the accumulation of various types of impressions deposited by the long course of the evolution of consciousness. These impressions express themselves as desires, and the range of the operation of consciousness is strictly limited by these desires. The sanskaras, or impressions, form an enclosure around the possible field of consciousness. The circle of sanskaras constitutes that limited area in which alone the individual consciousness can be focused. With some of the desires, action is merely latent, but others can actually translate themselves into action. The capacity of a desire to find expression in conduct depends upon the intensity and the amount of sanskaras connected with it. To use a geometric metaphor, we might say that when a desire passes into action, it traverses a distance that is equal to the radius of a circle, describing the boundary of the sanskaras connected with it. When a desire gathers sufficient strength, it projects itself into action in order to get fulfilled. The range of selfishness is equal to the range of desires. Owing to the hindrance of multifarious desires, it becomes impossible for the soul to find free and full expression of its true being, and life becomes self-centered and narrow. The entire life of the personal ego is continually in the grip of wanting, that is, an attempt to seek fulfillment of desires through things that change and vanish. The subtitle is Wanting Ends in Dissatisfaction. But there can be no real fulfillment through transient things. The satisfaction derived from the fleeting things of life is not lasting, and the wants of man remain unfulfilled. There is thus a general sense of dissatisfaction accompanied by all kinds of worries. Lust, greed, and anger. The chief forms in which the frustrated ego finds expression are lust, greed, and anger. Lust is very much like greed in many respects, but it differs in the manner of its fulfillment, which is directly related to the gross sphere. Lust finds its expression through the medium of physical body and is concerned with the flesh. It is a form of entanglement with the gross sphere. Gross sphere, okay. The three spheres are explained in the glossary. Maybe we'll go to it after we finish the reading, after this chapter. Greed is a state of restlessness of the heart, and it consists mainly of craving for power and possession. Possessions and power are sought for the fulfillment of desires. Man is only partially satisfied in his attempt to have the fulfillment of his desires. And this partial satisfaction fans and increases the flame of craving instead of extinguishing it. Thus, greed always finds an endless field of conquest and leaves the individual endlessly dissatisfied. The chief expressions of greed are related to the emotional part of man. It is a form of entanglement with the subtle sphere. Anger.
Karthik?
Yeah.
Can you go back to that last sentence? The last sentence you read.
Chief expressions of greed are related to the emotional part of man. It is a form of entanglement with the subtle sphere.
Yeah, that last sentence, what does it mean? The chief expressions of greed are related to the emotional part of the man. Of course, greed is an emotion. Yes, but he says it is a form of entanglement with the subtle sphere.
Yeah.
Anybody has any? Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody has any inputs?
No, you can. You can.
No,
you have any idea, you can explain, Karthik.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a mental thing, right?
I think you should finish these two paragraphs, lust, greed, and anger, and then try to discuss.
Probably,
I have made a notes on this. I will read that also.
Great. Okay, so let me just finish anger. So let's, for now, keep the fact that lust is related to the gross sphere and greed is linked to the subtle sphere. I'm continuing reading and we'll wait for you, Mama, after this para. Anger is the fume of an irritated mind. It is caused by the thwarting of desires. It feeds the limited ego and is used for domination and aggression. It aims at removing the obstacles existing in the fulfillment of desires. The frenzy of anger nourishes egoism and conceit, and it is the greatest benefactor of the limited ego. Mind is the seat of anger, and its expressions are mostly through the activities of the mind. Anger is a form of entanglement with the mental sphere. Lust, greed, and anger, respectively, have body, heart, and mind as their vehicles of expression. Okay, so you want to share your notes on this topic? I also suggest we read the glossary on the three.
Yes, you can go and read.
No, your notes first, then we do glossary, or which way do you want? Okay, let me do glossary. Anybody has the physical book?
Regarding the lust, greed, and anger, these are what do? They do something on the frustrated ego. They influence the frustrated ego in different ways. And lust is entanglement related to the gross sphere, related to the body. Gross sphere means the body. So lust is related to flesh, the whole body. That is lust. So it craves for some bodily comforts. That is regarding lust. Next level is restlessness, craving, which is seen always in the subtle sphere related to the heart, that is greed. So greed is affecting the heart. So once again, it acts on the same ego, but in a different way. It creates a lot of restlessness, craving. And this is the, say, the characteristics of the subtle sphere. or the subtle world. So related to heart, that is greed. The third one is irritation, aggression, seen with the mind or the mental sphere, that is anger. So one after the other, lust leads to greed. More and more lust we would like to have. That creates a characteristic of a greed, a craving for it, a continuous craving. And then when we are not satisfied, the self ego is not satisfied, because the whole characteristic is always dissatisfaction. There is never satisfaction in this. So because of that, we get angry. So aggression, all these characteristics will develop. So the whole gamut is a sort of a cycle, starting with the body, going towards the subtle sphere, and also involving the mental sphere. So the whole drop soul is caught up in this whole activity, and there is no end to it unless we recognize this and try to avoid this, try to get out of this. Jai Baba.
Beautiful, beautiful, Mamaji. I got an idea now. Yeah. So,
Okay,
so lust is connecting with the tissue and the senses, right? Through the senses, touch of external thing. Like if you put food on the tongue, we get the satisfaction. That is the gross thing. Greed is more. We want more. There's not, right? So there's more towards this subtle sphere, and the anger happens in the mental sphere, because it's mental conflict between what we know, what we have an idea, and then it's happening contradictory. So it is a conflict that's happening in the mind. Okay, got it. Thank you very much.
So I just looked at the glossary, if you can see on screen. So basically, it's very a small description. The sphere consisting of the first floor planes of consciousness as experienced by the subtle body through one's subtle impressions, which are less dense than the gross impressions. The fourth plane serves as the threshold to the mental sphere, but is neither fully subtle nor mental. So that's one. So we'll just read the gross sphere and yeah, gross sphere. Is it here? Yeah, gross body form. And then gross sphere world. Gross sphere is world of matter, the visible and invisible worlds in creation. Oh, visible and invisible worlds in creation, which can be experienced by the gross body through one's dense, gross impressions. Alame Nasut, and Annabhavana. Yeah. So let's just see mental world just down here. Yeah, mental sphere, mental world. This consists, the sphere consisting of the fifth and sixth planes of consciousness as experienced by the mental body through one's mental impressions, which are finer and more feeble, that is much less dense than the subtle impressions. Alame Jabrut, Manobhuvan. I think this is also covered in greater detail in God Speaks, if you are sure we recollect. So with that, we'll continue the read. Does that kind of answer the questions? I mean, Ravi is fine, I guess. Right? Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Vicious circle. Vicious circle. Man experiences disappointment through lust, greed, and anger, and the frustrated ego, in its turn, seeks further gratification through lust, greed, and anger. Consciousness is thus caught up in a vicious circle of endless disappointment. Disappointment comes into existence when either lust, greed, or anger is thwarted in its expression. It is thus a general reaction of gross, subtle, and mental entanglements. It is a depression caused by the non-fulfillment of lust, greed, and anger, which together are coextensive with selfishness. Selfishness, which is the common basis of these three ingredient vices is thus the ultimate cause of disappointment and worries. It defeats itself. It seeks fulfillment through desires, but succeeds only in arriving at unending dissatisfaction. Selfishness inevitably leads to dissatisfaction and disappointment because desires are endless. The problem of happiness is therefore the problem of dropping one's desires. The subtitle is Road to Happiness. Desires, however, cannot be effectively overcome through mechanical repression. They can be annihilated only through knowledge. If you dive deep in the realm of thoughts and think seriously for just a few minutes, you will realize the emptiness of desires. Think of what you have enjoyed all these years and what you have suffered. All that you have enjoyed through life is today nil. All that you have suffered through life is also nothing in the present. All was illusory. It is your right to be happy, and yet you create your own unhappiness by wanting things. Wanting is the source of perpetual restlessness. If you do not get the thing you want, you are disappointed. And if you get it, you want more and more of it and become unhappy. Say, I do not want anything, and be happy. The continuous realization of the futility of wants will eventually lead you to knowledge. This self-knowledge will give you the freedom from wants that leads to the road to abiding happiness. Renunciation of wants. Wants should be carefully distinguished from needs. Pride and anger, greed and lust are all different from needs. You might think, I need all that I want, but this is a mistake. If you're thirsty in a desert, what you need is good water, not lemonade. As long as one has a body, there will be some needs, and it is necessary to meet those needs. But wants are an outcome of infatuated imagination. They must be scrupulously killed if there is to be any happiness. As the very being of selfishness consists of desires, renunciation of wants becomes a process of death. Dying in the ordinary sense means parting with the physical body, but dying in the real sense means renunciation of low desires. The priests prepare people for false death by painting gloomy pictures of hell and heaven. But their death is illusory, as life is one unbroken continuity. The real death consists of the cessation of desires, and it comes by gradual stages. The dawn, the subtitle is Love and Service. The dawn of love facilitates the death of selfishness. Being is dying by loving. If you cannot, being is dying by loving. If you cannot love one another, how can you love even those who torture you? The limits of selfishness are created by ignorance. When a person realizes that he can have more glorious satisfaction by widening the sphere of his interests and activities, he is heading towards the life of service. At this stage, he entertains many good desires. He wants to make others happy by relieving distress and helping them. And though even in such good desires, there is often an indirect and latent reference to the self, narrow selfishness has no grip over good deeds. Even good desires may, in a sense, be said to be a form of enlightened and extended selfishness, for like bad desires, they too move within the domain of duality. But as the person entertains good desires, his selfishness embraces a larger conception that eventually brings about its own extinction. Instead of merely trying to be illustrious, arresting, and possessive, he learns to be useful to others. Arising of selfishness. The desires that enter into the constitution of the personal ego are either good or bad. Bad desires are ordinarily referred to as forms of selfishness, and good desires are referred to as forms of selflessness. However, there is no hard and fast line dividing selfishness from selflessness. Both move in the domain of duality, and from the ultimate point of view that transcends the opposites of good and bad, the distinction between selfishness and selflessness is chiefly one of range. Selfishness and selflessness are two phases of the life of the personal ego, and these two phases are continuous with each other. Selfishness arises when all the desires are centered around the narrow individuality. Selflessness arises when this crude organization of desires suffers disintegration and there is a general dispersing of desires, with the result that they cover a much wider sphere. Selfishness is the narrowing down of interests to a limited field. Selflessness is the extension of interest over a wide field. To put it paradoxically, selfishness is a restricted form of selflessness, and selflessness is the drawing out of selfishness into a wide sphere of activity. Selfishness must be transmuted into selflessness before the domain of duality is completely transcended. The subtitle is Transformation of Selfishness into Selflessness. Persistent and continuous performance of good deeds wears out selfishness. Selfishness extended and expressed in form of good deeds becomes the instrument of its own destruction. The good is the main link between selfishness, thriving, and dying. Selfishness, which in the beginning is the father of evil tendencies, becomes, through good deeds, the hero of its own defeat. When the evil tendencies are completely replaced by good tendencies, selfishness is transformed into selflessness. That is, individual selfishness loses itself in universal interest. Though the selfless and good life is also bound by the opposites, goodness is a necessary step toward freedom from the opposites. Goodness is the means by which the soul annihilates its own ignorance. Universal selfhood. From the good, the soul passes on to God. Selflessness is merged into universal selfhood, which is beyond good and bad, virtue and vice, and all the other dual aspects of Maya, illusion or ignorance. The height of selflessness is the beginning of the feeling of oneness with all. In the state of liberation, there is neither selfishness nor selflessness in the ordinary sense, but both of these are taken up and merged into the feeling of selfness for all. I read this line again. The height of selflessness is the beginning of the feeling of oneness with all. In the state of liberation, there is neither selfishness nor selflessness in the ordinary sense, but both of these are taken up and merged into the feeling of selfness for all. Realization of the unity of all is accompanied by peace and unfathomable bliss. It does not in any way lead to spiritual stagnation or to the obliteration of relative values. Selfness for all brings about undisturbed harmony without loss of discrimination and unshakable peace without indifference to the surroundings. This selfness for all is not an outcome of merely subjective synthesis. It is a result of an actual attainment of union with the ultimate reality, which includes all. union with ultimate reality. Open your heart by weeding out all desires and by harboring only one longing, the longing for union with the ultimate reality. The ultimate reality is not to be sought in the changing things of the external environment, but in one's own being. Every time your soul intends to enter your human heart, it finds the door locked and the inside too full of desires. Do not keep the doors of your hearts closed. Everywhere there is the source of abiding bliss, and yet all are miserable because of desires born of ignorance. The goal of lasting happiness shines forth only when the limited ego, with all its desires, finds its complete and final extinction. Spirituality, a positive attitude toward life. Renunciation of desires does not mean asceticism or a merely negative attitude to life. Any such negation of life would make man inhuman. Divinity is not devoid of humanity. Spirituality must make man more human. It is a positive attitude of releasing all that is good, noble, and beautiful in man. It also contributes to all that is gracious and lovely in the environment. Spirituality does not require the external renunciation of worldly activities or the avoiding of duties and responsibilities. It only requires that while performing the worldly activities or discharging the responsibilities arriving from the specific place and position of the individual, the inner spirit should remain free from the burden of desires. Perfection consists in remaining free from the entanglements of duality. Such freedom from entanglements is the most essential requirement of unhindered creativity. But this freedom cannot be attained by running away from life for fear of entanglement. This would mean denial of life. Perfection does not consist in shrinking from the dual expressions of nature. The attempt to escape from entanglement implies fear of life. Spirituality consists in meeting life adequately and fully without being overpowered by the opposites. It must assert its dominion over all illusions, however attractive or powerful. Without avoiding contact with the different forms of life, a perfect one functions with complete detachment in the midst of intense activities. Okay, that's the end of the chapter. So, yeah, Ashok, go ahead.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
there's a from selfishness to selflessness is the can be the essence of the thing. And I think one more thought which comes to my mind is that we all are one. So the one world, one family. So Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. There's a reference that we have to consider that everybody is one in one of the few paragraphs above.
Yes.
So that's what
Yeah.
comes to my mind.
Selfless for all.
Yeah.
Yes, for all.
Baba, yeah. Basically, Baba is saying here that do not run away from the world, be in it, but don't be off it. And the antidote for that is only love. So if we keep loving Baba, remembering him all the time, doing things which he would not like us to, not doing things he would not like us to do, feel his presence around us, we will not be doing, we'll naturally be developing that detachment from the actions that we are doing because we are surrendering everything to Baba, right? So that is why love is so very important because our mind remains remembering him and keeps us detached from the results of the action. Jai Baba.
Another important takeaway.
Jai Baba.
Yeah, finish Ashok and
Go ahead,
then we
Ashok.
can
Yeah, I think another important takeaway is that uh, in the midst of all our worldly duties, we still have to remember, keep remembering Baba. So he says that don't shirk from your duties, even whatever your duties and you're given to do, complete those duties. So it's a sort of two things you're doing. You're staying in the gross world, doing your duties, yet remembering Baba. Jai Baba.
Yeah, correct. Mamaji.
I have okay. I have a few points here. The consciousness is covered with sanskaras, which consists of desires, dissatisfaction, disappointment. So 3Ds cover the consciousness. Desires, as an outcome of involving in desires, you get dissatisfaction and disappointment. These keep the consciousness, even though, as we have read in God Speaks, at the human stage, the consciousness is perfect, is total, but it is covered by the veil of desires, leading to the self ego getting disappointed and dissatisfied. So, for that, the antidote told in this chapter is drop desires. So, this is mentioned in page 12. He clearly says drop desires. So, we can take this as a sort of a catchword. So, only solution is not modifying your desires, but drop desires. So, the way for it is to go for good desires first and then drop totally the desires. So, that is also explained. And the other highlight or point which made me very, very happy with Baba is that he says, don't get away from your life, don't run away. And comparing to so many other the advisors or things like that, asceticism and strict following some rigid activities to for enlightenment, he doesn't advocate any of those things. He says live in this life, start from selfishness, go towards selflessness, and then become the one word used as selfness, identify
Selfness
the
for all.
selfness for all. So that is as good as Kama, what he says, dwell deeper and find yourself as the only self. So from the small self, go to the bigger self, which is the single one, which is the existence. There is nothing else away from that. So all these things lead to that, but how we can practice this is very clearly mentioned here. So Baba says that we have to live as we are living, but think and then try to drop desires. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba,
Cool.
I
Very
think
good
that's very
summary.
profound. And that also, I got a thought about my question earlier. What's the difference in past avataric practices and this one, like Mamaji explained? Islam says, with due respect to Islam, Islam is also Baba anyway, 5 times prayer. Baba says, no need to fall into rituals of prayers. Love me all the time. Buddha said, Nirvana, leave everything, go to the jungles, something, something. So Baba says, live your life, love me all the time. Maybe Rama, Krishna, or the past avatar said something I don't know very well, but there are differences. So that's what we were pointing to in my question earlier. Jai Baba, just a comment. Jai Baba.
So all you needed to wait was one chapter and you got your answer, Sunil. I'm happy for you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
There's one important thing that Baba said. He mentioned a mantra here. The mantra is, Karthik, can you go back to the previous page, please?
Yeah.
Yeah. See here, wait. Say, I do not want anything and be happy, that if we, no, above, just
Yeah,
right
yeah.
above. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. See, that is the key word. If we talk out to ourselves, I don't want anything, even if the mind tempts to push some desires, by listening to your own words, it will hesitate, so this is a very good method of keep saying, I do not want anything, I do not want to be anything, and be happy.
Don't ritualize it. No, that's the fear. That's the fear. Don't ritualize it, but yeah, I think it's a subliminal and strong assertion that you can keep. We can keep practicing, and as Mama said, the real goal is elimination of desires. Elimination of desires first through the step up of good desires, and then complete removal of desires. That's the end state. Yeah.
Jai Baba,
Yeah.
when companies give you targets, are they considered desires? If I say I don't want anything, then I can't close a sale. How to do that?
I'll just
that's
add.
even that's even my question actually. If I do for a 5-kilometer run every morning for a good health, or eat right food for good health, or some such thing in office, so how do we take care of that?
See, we are doing a job, and whatever the company stipulates, we have to follow that. And we can take it as Baba's prasad, and religiously we can do that. Nothing wrong with that.
So we need to work with the target, and whatever results come, we should surrender ourselves to that result.
Exactly.
Yes.
So if I've done poorly, I'll tell my boss, sorry, I surrendered to Baba. I don't know. This is all that came to it. How to in real life? How to balance these two things? It's not easy. I mean, in my case, I remember Baba almost all the time. But there are times where I have to be tough, or I have to be difficult, or I have to find difficult. I find difficulties in situations, then you can't distance from there, You get carried away, and then you get angry, and you get all those sanskaras coming back to you. So, but if we have to live our lives and not escape from what is our duty, it is not easy not to want. It is not, because life sets targets for you.
The prescription is finally personal, and ask Baba to give you that prescription. I think that the challenge is context is everything, right? So what you may tend to take as a reasonable target, the point of the person in the desert, water and lemonade, right? So I think first clear thing is get down to the principle of minimalism, right? So as far as possible, live a simple life, right? Simple as in minimize the number of needs and wants, and do the positive things. And in the performance of duty, don't shirk and give it your best, and not worry about outcome. So those would be my takeaways. But it's very, very tough to actually put it in practice in a cruel and busy and complicated business world. But I think operating in that business world, or in the material world, with the true recognition of the values and the true recognition of yourself, is the slow way to progress.
Another point is, Baba do not want us to be, didn't say that you have to be perfect in, not desiring anything. We can never be like that. But our attempt to be not desirous, that is what Baba likes. Our attempt, however way we are successful, that much you can do. That's all you can do, But Baba likes that attempt, and going to some extent. And he said, if you take one step, I will take 10 steps to help you. That's what he says.
Yeah, and whatever we do, we try to do perfectly. We read that, right?
Yes.
So that's also important, because many times we do things, but we swing 80%, 90%, 70%, 50%. It's not complete. So we should do our complete action, surrender it to him, and then see whatever he has the results for us. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
If I may add,
we try to get perfectness, but we can take small steps, and one day we'll be perfect. Yeah, Jai Baba.
And also, we need to remember, I think, as we said, frustration of ego leads to lust, greed, and anger, and desires. And when we reach the chapter on ego, I think it's also mentioned that it's a necessary evil until a point. It's like a ballast.
Mm-hmm.
You have to maintain it to some point and then give it up. Did I remember that right, or I'm mistaking something?
Yeah, ego,
so,
you got to have ego. Ego is the last thing that he will take it away. That is
so
the perfect master's job, to take away that ego. It will be
that
there till the
means
last second.
that means even through that ego, you will keep getting lust, greed, and anger at different stages. You just need to minimize it slowly and give it up at the last stage. You don't have to
Baba
suddenly
calls
one day
it.
give up. Yeah.
Yeah, Baba calls it a provisional ego. Yeah.
Provisional
The
working ego.
provisional ego word is
Provisional
used
ego.
somewhere. Yeah.
Provisional
And we-
working ego. So till after you start on the path, you convert your ego ideally to a provisional working ego, and then the perfect master comes and helps you get rid of it finally.
relieves
So
you.
you're
And we've heard many saints, advanced saints, giving into lust or anger. They used to, all the Indian mythological stories, they tell you they curse people because of anger, or they give into apsaras and so on and something. So it stays there for very long, I think. We we can't just get rid of it suddenly.
Yes, Sunil ji is remembering Durvasa and Vishwamitra and so many other rishis.
All the stories that we used to hear. Yes.
So a point which I can add here regarding Nomita ji's observation is that there are 2 points. Baba has also said everywhere that every action attracts new sanskaras. So whatever we do, whether we are doing a good desire or going towards a good desire or selfishness, that also attracts some sort of a samskara. So this is sort of a trying to wash something, you will add the soap to the cloth and that remains even after it is dried. So that is the attachment of sanskaras. The other one is whenever we act in this world, there is a lot of pressure on us. So the spiritual path ideally may not be possible to be used all the time. So we land up with the practicality of the situation. So only aspect that we have to remember here is behind your mind, do not get attached with what you do. So this unattachment towards life, that is a process which we'll have to learn, and then that will try to reduce the say sticking of these sanskaras and leading us to the vicious cycle of repeating the same thing. Jai Baba.
so if I may add, Mamaji, what you're saying is that we move from desires to desireless, or we tend towards desirelessness. I mean, we cannot become totally desireless, but we can move or tend towards desirelessness. Would that be a right way of putting it?
Says we are moving with the spiritual knowledge and say constant trying to practice that, we tend to be from desire to desirelessness, and the ultimate is drop desire. That is very difficult, and maybe in some reincarnation we may do that. But right now what we are to move is towards desirelessness, and also the attachment of self to the selflessness. So think of others also in every sphere of your activity. So that is how you have to enlarge yourself, so that the veil is gradually removed, which is covering your consciousness. So that becomes the way out for us. It's a difficult process, but this awareness gives us the chance for practicing it. If we
Yes.
were not aware of all these things, we will never try to do that. That is what we are learning here. Baba is making us, that is the real process of awakening. So it is there. He is opening it out to us and then leaving us to think on that and then go ahead. Jai Baba.
Absolutely. I think in all this we missed one part. So I think there's the less we, I mean, the more we say about it, we'll never do justice to it. The fact that whenever we are performing actions, it has to be intelligent action, right? So that's the only way to undo and exhaust the samskaras. Of course, detachment, of course, discretion, and all of that. But when we get to the chapter on action and inaction, so it's a two-page chapter. It's a very, very powerful chapter, which actually tells you how to convert this into day-to-day life. Very, very tough again. I'm not trying to minimize it or simplify it here, but intelligent action and the right use of inaction is only way of making that progress. But you're spot on. I mean, we are glad that we are all collectively and individually trying to be aware of this. This awareness is now with us, and slowly and surely, I'm sure we will make progress.
I just wanted to add one more thing, and that is this the dichotomy between the professional need and our personal desires. So I think when it comes to desires and professional need for action, I think we can bifurcate it there. Because if you're asked to do something like say meet targets, do some work, that is your professional need of given to you by your boss or by your business. So, would that also add to sanskaras? And if it does, I think Baba has said, "Do your work, do your duty." So, would that be taken as a adding to your sanskaras? That's one thing which really intrigues me, because you have to work, you have to do your stuff, you have to do your work which is given to you, allotted to you, which you have to do. But at the same time, we can drop our personal desires. Would that be a good way of bifurcating it?
Yeah, I think that's a very good way of putting it. But what matters is we can divide that in our actions, external things, what we do, and also as far as our personal thing, what my personal desires. I love to eat, how much time are we spending for that versus fulfilling the desires of our manager at work or something else, So we have to differentiate that. What affects us mostly is our personal thing. What we do in the evening after coming back home, how we think, how am I going to be happy? How am I going to satisfy myself? Those things affect us a lot more than any other things.
Agree.
Yeah. See,
Cool.
one thing I would like to bring is the love part, on page 13. The dawn of love facilitates the death of selfishness. See, that is the key for that. We don't have to even worry about selfishness because we will get nowhere. If we go on worrying, oh my God, I'm selfish, I have to be selfless, we will never get there because we are again trying to catch the tail of ourselves, Instead, if we focus on love, that will cleanse our self and we'll get out of the selfishness. See, that is the key point in here. Love and service.
Yeah.
Yes, well taken. That is one way of doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I think we'll just quickly finish the card. Any other questions? So he starts with the analysis of what is selfishness. Then wanting invariably ends in dissatisfaction. Any that's the nature of the want. Then he describes the lust, greed, and anger, and the fact that they are linked to the three spheres. And apart from the three spheres, body, heart, and mind are the vehicles that are used. Then we have the concept that this is a vicious circle of wanting. And then you have the road to happiness is only through slowly getting rid of your wants. Then anybody wants to help me here? Yeah. So the dawn of love is the way you start moving away from selfishness to selflessness. Then you transform the selfishness into selflessness, and then the final transmutation is selfness in all, or selfness for all, right? So that's what he says. That is universal selfhood. And then he briefly mentions about the God realization by mentioning union with spiritual reality. And spirituality, finally, he ends with the practical aspect, in the sense that there's no running away, but you have to live in the world, in the material world, and then operate in this model of minimizing desires and tending towards a selfness for all, right? So yeah, anything else that we need to add here?
Karthik, could we just amplify or clarify selfness? Is it our inner loving self? Is that OILS is selfness?
Yes, it is, and also
Yes.
it is mentioned here with a capital S.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
So that's a very intriguing word. Very.
Yes, yes.
Selfness for all. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's about it. So we'll wait for the questions and the takeaways when that happens. We can mark this as read and go to the next. What's the time? Okay, we are almost out of time. So want to have some fun? I can switch off the recording and then we can just chat around.
See, every one of us start with selfishness, right? And